building 3 weeks ago. It was cheap. Too cheap for the location, honestly. One of those concrete apartment blocks that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. Gray walls, elevator that groaned like a dying animal, and neighbors who avoided eye contact like it was a disease. Perfect for a student with no money and no friends in a new city. The landlord handed me one key and said, "Room 301, don't bother the tenants on the 3rd floor." Which was odd because I was on the 3rd floor. I tried asking what he meant, but he just repeated the same thing. Slower. "Don't bother the tenants on the 3rd floor." I thought maybe he meant someone specific. A crazy old lady? A shut-in? Maybe a dealer? I didn't push. I was just glad to have a place to sleep. The first night was fine. Just the usual city noises. Sirens in the distance. Wind knocking against the windows. It was around 3 a.m. when I heard it. 3 slow knocks. Coming from the hallway. Not from my door, but somewhere nearby. I ignored it. Old buildings make sounds, right? But it happened again the next night, and the next. Always 3 knocks. Always at 3 a.m. Never on my door, just out there. Eventually, I got curious. So on the 5th night, I waited by the peephole. At 2:55, I stood completely still, heart pounding, watching the hallway. At 3 a.m., exactly, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. But there was no one there, just the empty hallway lit by the dim yellow light. I stared at the 3 apartment doors across from me, 302, 303, and no number. The 3rd door was plain gray, no peephole, no doorknob, nothing. Just smooth metal. I hadn't even noticed it before. The next morning, I asked the guy in 302 if he'd heard anything weird at night. He slammed the door before I finished the sentence. The girl in 303 just whispered, "Don't open the 3rd door," and closed her curtains. I went back out and stood in front of it. No hinges, no keyhole. It looked more like a panel. I pressed my hand against it. It was warm. That night, the knocking didn't stop. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Then again, and again. It went on for hours. It got louder, more impatient, like whatever was on the other side was getting angry. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor of my room, staring at my own door, clutching a kitchen knife like it would help. Then, silence. I waited. Nothing. Until I heard a sound directly behind me, inside my apartment. I turned around slowly. The back wall, the one that connected to the 3rd door, had a crack running across it, a thin, jagged line that hadn't been there before. I moved out the next day, but it followed me. In my new apartment, the walls are clean, the hallway is quiet. For a week, everything was fine. Then last night, I woke up at 3 a.m. and heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I checked my door. Nothing. Then I turned to my bedroom wall. There it was again. The same thin, jagged crack. And then a whisper. It came from inside the wall, right next to my ear. "You opened it." It began on a cold October night, under a sky so dark it swallowed every star. Emma had just moved into the old Marrow house on the outskirts of the town, a decrepit Victorian mansion no one dared enter for decades. She was a writer looking for solitude, hoping the isolation would free her creativity. What she didn't expect was the house itself to become the story. The first few days passed quietly, almost too quietly. The silence was thick, oppressive. At night, The wind howled through broken windows like a distant cry, and the wooden floors creaked with an eerie rhythm. Emma tried to dismiss the unease as the natural sounds of an old house settling, but then the whispers started. At first, they were faint, barely audible, like a breath against the back of her neck. She thought it was the wind, or perhaps the walls playing tricks. But every night, as the clock struck midnight, the whispers grew clearer, weaving words just out of comprehension. She could feel a presence watching her from the shadows. One evening, as rain hammered the roof, Emma sat in the dim glow of her desk lamp, trying to write. The whispers crescendoed suddenly, becoming a low chant. She froze, heart pounding. The voice was cold, hollow, ancient. Leave, now, or join us. Emma's skin prickled. She stood, turning to the dark corners of the room, but saw nothing. The next day, she explored the attic, an area sealed off by rotting boards. She forced the door open and found a trunk covered in dust. Inside, a bundle of old letters and a leather-bound journal rested beneath a faded shawl. The letters spoke of a family tragedy, a mother who had lost her children in the house, accused of witchcraft, their souls said to be trapped forever in its walls. Her hands trembled as she read the journal entries written in a frantic scrawl. The shadows move. They speak. They want me to join them. I see their faces in the dark. They wait for me. That night, the whispers became voices, pleading, desperate, sorrowful. Shadows stretched across the walls, twisting into shapes that looked like faces. Emma felt cold fingers brush her arm and saw a pair of eyes glowing faintly in the corner. She tried to leave, but the doors wouldn't open. The windows were sealed tight by an unseen force. The house was alive, a prison. Days turned into a nightmare of endless whispers, chilling touches, and ghostly apparitions. Emma's reflection in the mirror warped into a hollow-eyed specter. Her writing became frantic, pages filled with warnings and desperate cries for help. Then came the night she saw the children, pale, translucent, with hollow sockets for eyes, floating silently through the halls. They reached out with trembling hands, begging for release. Emma knew the only way out was to free their souls. She gathered the letters and journal and read aloud the incantation written on the last page. The air grew thick, the house groaned, and the shadows screamed. A blinding light filled the room. The children smiled, a bittersweet release, and vanished. The oppressive weight lifted. The doors unlocked. Emma fled to Marrow House at dawn, never looking back. But sometimes, in the dead of night, she still hears the whispering shadows calling her name.